Hello everyone and welcome to my survival review for the Season 3 of The War Within based on the initial changes we've heard about so far. This video will mainly be focused on some massive buffs to key abilities that are aimed at increasing AoE damage but will affect pretty much all damage as we see. So numbers buffs for survival most likely, some quality of life changes for Sentinel and Lunar Storm that are also small numbers buffs, and some substantial numbers buffs to Pack Leader in particular, and some small defensive buffs for Pack Leader as well. There's also brand new tier set bonuses that I'll go over. So the new tier set bonuses are based on hero talent and not the spec itself. So it'll be Pack Leader set bonus and a Sentinel set bonus. And I've also done videos for the other two specs that you can find links to in the top of the description below. So for this video, these videos in general, I don't care too much about overall / comparative sort of meta numbers right now. And I think neither should you. The first week of the PTR, like data and stuff and predictions from this, from any streamer ever, have basically never been a good predictor of live performance because so many things are going to change, if not mechanically, then at least in the numbers, between now and patch release, and then again from like in the first few weeks of the season. So you don't have to pick your main spec or class until the patch drops. In fact, if you care about numbers and stuff, I don't think that's a good idea at all. But when sims are available, I will show them and I'll keep you updated on them. So you should subscribe for that. But for now, we're looking at mechanics and how numbers can affect those mechanics. I'm trying to step up my video game in general, so please do leave a comment with any feedback and requests / suggestions on how I did. This video will mostly just be talking and text, and the text will basically be the notes that I'm reading off. So if you want to follow that and read while you also listen, then that's fine. But you can also just listen to this video in the background of whatever you're doing. 1.25x speed is also completely fine, especially if you're a native English speaker, because I can be a little bit of a slow talker. Anyway, let's hop straight into it. So first of all, we have this new talent called Harmonize. This is a class tree talent, so it's not unique to survival. It's a beast mastery / survival kind of thing. It's a choice node with explosive shot that increases your pet damage by 4% it says here, but really once you pick the other talent below it called Blackrock Munitions, it becomes 6%. Surprisingly, and perhaps against Blizzard's intentions, this might actually be worth using for Pack Leader survival hunters in particular on single target, because as we'll see, we're getting a lot more pet damage in general, and this is gonna scale with that. And Explosive Shot just doesn't really get any modifiers from being Pack Leader, so yeah, in general you can expect a lot more of a pet damage skew from playing Pack Leader, which is obviously thematically appropriate. And this talent potentially is actually numerically superior to pressing Explosive Shot and so on for some builds in some situations. In addition, they've taken Wildfire Arsenal, which was this rather convoluted buff that added up to 12% increased wildfire bomb damage, but only on the initial part. They've taken that whole stacking thing out, and where like you got free stacks when you pop your cooldowns, and they've just changed it to be improved Wildfire Bomb, which is just flat 8% wildfire bomb damage. So it was boring because you never played around the buff that was there before, and it still is pretty boring because it's just completely passive now. So one thing to note here is that even though Arsenal, if you have read it, it's stacked to 12% and the new buff here is 8%, it's probably still a net buff because, and this is really important when looking at survival tuning and numbers in general, so Wildfire Bomb has two damage components, the initial hit, and then the dot that comes after. And in addition to that, it also has increased damage on the primary target and then reduced damage on additional targets. So, and that's because Wildfire Bomb is such a core ability for survival that it's the main AoE ability and to some extent the main single target ability. Like it's just one button is doing a lot of different things here. So they've had to, there's a lot of stuff going on is basically what I'm saying. But the point is, this is probably a very small net buff to Wildfire Bomb and damage overall, even though the numbers may not look like it. Next up are some redesigned talents. So Colder Herd, which is this bleed, so when you press Kill Shot before, you would get a buff that increased all your other bleed damage by 25%. They've removed that whole thing. That was like a failed experiment. And now they've just made it say, okay, when you press Kill Shot, you also deal 30% additional damage in the form of a bleed dot over 6 seconds. A simplification, numerically not very significant one way or the other. It's hard to sort of evaluate it without sims. Born to Kill, just below it, now increases kill shots damage, so that also increases this 30% number. And Death Blows proc rate by 50%. So Death Blows proc rate, which is kill shot procs, Normally 10% chance from kill command, now 15%. So that's what I mean when I say 50%. So significantly more kill shot procs. And with both of these nodes combined, kill shot will be a very powerful ability, and it will be usable way more often. So that's nice if you like kill shot, and that's pretty much it. Next, we're getting into some straight up just buffs to certain talents and mechanics for Survival Hunter. So this is like the meat of the numbers gains that I'm expecting in Season 3. So number 1, Fury of the Eagle with the Ruthless Marauder talent is now guaranteed to give you a full free tip stacks very quickly instead of having a chance to. So before, you would press Fury of the Eagle and you had all these ticks, and each of them had a tiny chance, like 20% if I recall correctly, to give you a tip stack. And it was pretty annoying because you would be staring at it, staring at your tip stacks, hoping that if you don't get lucky in the first few ticks, that you would get your tip stacks towards the end. And it just felt kind of bad because sometimes you get your tip stacks towards the end, but then you've already queued the next global after the channel and everything, right? It just didn't feel great. Now it's just 100% chance it's going to make Fury of the Eagle subjectively more powerful and interesting to cast, because you're going to press it and instantly just shoot up to 3 stacks a tip. And it's a small numbers buffs as well, of course. Next up is Wildfire Bomb's initial damage is increased by 50%. This alludes to the part I said earlier. This is not general Wildfire Bomb damage, it's only the initial damage. So right now, the initial damage part of Wildfire Bomb is around 54% of the total. So this is a 27% net buff to Wildfire Bomb overall, which is huge for AoE. Tip of the Spear also only affects the initial damage of Wildfire Bomb, so the fact that they're preferentially buffing the initial part means that Tip of the Spear, it actually sort of amplifies that even further, because you have a huge buff to the initial part, which Tip of the Spear mainly affects, and so a higher proportion of the initial damage of Wildfire Bomb compared to the dot, plus the effect of Tip of the Spear means even more power than what it says on paper. So Wildfire Bomb is our main ability in all situations, but especially AoE. Can easily do 30 to 40% of our Mythic Plus overall, and that's getting buffed by 27% plus, right? So just massive, massive buff to overall numbers in Mythic Plus and in single target as well. In addition to that, Explosives Expert, which is this kind of boring 2-pointer that just gives us up to 5% bomb and explosive shot damage, well, that now stacks up to 10%. So on top of this, we're getting an additional 5% Wildfire Bomb damage, and this is all Wildfire Bomb damage, not just initial. And you pretty much always run this talent to begin with in Mythic Plus, because it's required to get down to Fury of the Eagle, which we generally like. Huge Wildfire Bomb damage increases, which is a core ability, especially on AoE, but also on single target. Very, very good. We do have one nerf and very perplexing change in my opinion, which is Bloodseeker now no longer causes kill command to apply bleed on its own. So Bloodseeker's other effect is that for every bleeding enemy within 12 yards of us or so, we get 10% attack damage, or attack speed. We get 10% attack speed. That's good because we have this other talent that says whenever we auto-attack, we reduce the cooldown of our Wildfire Bomb a bit. But now we no longer have a way of very reliably, with high uptime, applying this bleed ourselves, especially on single target. Because previously we would just have 100% uptime on single target at least on this bleed, and that would mean at least 10%, because that's the damaging, or that's the attack speed increase per bleeding enemy. And we pretty much always have that from the Bloodseeker kill command dot. Now we no longer have that. And besides the kill shots, we don't have a lot of way, and even that is not going to add that much uptime. We don't really have a way to make this talent work for ourselves. And that puts us in a very unique and weird position of having a talent point that relies on the presence of other specs to actually do anything of note. So without a Feral Druid or Guardian Druid or some other spec that applies bleeds in a group, this talent will be very, very low value for us. And I just can't understand why. Because it wasn't that powerful to begin with. Like, there was a small incentive to multi-dot kill commands to apply multiple bleeds, but even that was a very tiny DPS increase, and pretty much no one did it. Because no one bothered for such a small DPS increase. So they removed that, but no one really did it to begin with, and now we just have this really weird talent that we need others to activate for us. Very, very weird. It's not a hugely consequential nerf, I think, but it's just very odd. That's all. Next up are some hero talent changes. So there's some pack leader defensive buff. So shell cover, which was very poor before, is now slightly less poor. When you drop below 60% HP, you get a 15% DR. If your health drops lower, the DR increases to a maximum of 35% at 10% HP with a 90-second internal cooldown. So this is a nice buff and will be especially useful when you get ticked down by a very powerful dot. For example, like first boss in Cinderbrew has a very powerful dot on you. It'll be perfect for surviving another tick or two of that. But there are also many cases where it's worthless. Like anytime you're taking a single big hit from a boss or some Mythic Plus mechanic or whatever, and there's no follow-up damage, like it's just kind of a one-shot mechanic, it'll trigger this, but it'll be completely worthless because it really needs to be constant ticking damage for this to do anything. So good for dots, but completely worthless for like big hits or any dot that doesn't, like it brings you below 60% HP, but it's nowhere close to killing you, which is also very common. There are tons of situations where this is just completely worthless. It's technically a little bit better than before, but it's not by that much. And it's way worse than the Sentinel alternative, which is Don't Look Back, which is just constantly replenishing Absorb Shield that just, keeps our health topped up more reliably. Next up is Better Together, which is this just one of the nodes, sort of passive nodes in the pack leader tree. Before, it would reduce the cooldown of Hound of the Pack Leader from 30 to 25 seconds, so a few more beasts, and make your pets inherit more attack power from you. So essentially a net pet buff. They've simplified it and buffed it a lot. So now it's 15% pet damage overall, and it boosts Tip of the Spear's damage bonus by 10% additive. Meaning, with this, the base damage increase of tipping an ability goes from 15% to 25%, which is huge. Now, in practice, it's actually, the base, we're never going to be using Tip of the Spear at baseline power. It's usually going to be a lot higher from various effects. But even so, like let's say average Tip of the Spear contribution is 25 to 40%, somewhere in that range. 10% additive to that is massive, and Tip of the Spear will be way more powerful for Pack Leader than it is for Sentinel, and it's a huge damage bonus in general as well. And of course, it interacts pretty nicely with the Wildfire Bomb change, which is initial damage 50%, which of course Tip of the Spear is the only affects that initial part. So we're stacking multipliers into this Wildfire Bomb initial damage, and I imagine Pack Leader with cooldowns very stacked up can get some ridiculously massive Wildfire Bomb hits out, which I very much look forward to. So very, very good. Next up is the Sentinel Lunar Storm buff / quality of life change I alluded to earlier. Lunar Storm, when it comes off cooldown, it now resets the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb completely. So now you no longer have to hold Wildfire Bomb for it to come off cooldown. And this basically makes Sentinel completely passive / brainless in terms of playing, but I think that's actually an improvement. I don't normally say that, but in this case, the brain that it required before was, you cannot press like your favorite core ability for, sometimes several seconds because you have to hold it for the moment that Lunar Storm comes off cooldown. I hated it. I think everyone pretty much hated it. A lot of people got it wrong as well. So I think this change will make it more fun. It'll make it easier. And I think it's a net numbers buff for many people because it was pretty hard to pull this min-max off in practice unless you had like my fancy Hunter Week or pack from Patreon to sort of tell you when to hold it and stuff. So yeah, great change and a little bit of a numbers buff as well. Next up are the tier set bonuses. So as I mentioned before, these are based on your hero talent now and not your spec. So if you watched my BM video, or I guess if you watch both my Beast Mastery and my Marksmanship videos linked in the description before, you will already recognize some of these set bonuses, but of course they have different implications for the different specs, and some of the numbers are also different when associated with different specs. So the Pack Leader 2-piece here is pet damage is increased by 5%, okay, whatever. Beast damage increased by 15%, beast damage meaning the pets that you get from Pack Leader, like your boar, your bear, and your wyvern. Although your wyvern doesn't do damage, only the other two do damage. When you summon a beast, you get 8% haste, mastery, or crit for 8 seconds based on the beast that you summoned. And of course, you will constantly be summoning beasts and rotating between them, sometimes summoning multiple beasts all at once in your cooldowns. So this will have very high uptime, and you will constantly have overlapping haste, mastery, or crit buffs, sometimes even all 3 of them. And its uptime is also biased towards our cooldown windows because when we press Coordinated Assault, that gives us a free beast spawn, right? But then in addition to that, we're also having this independent cooldown of Howl of the Pack Leader that will summon beasts additionally for us. So during our cooldowns, we can easily summon 2 to 3 beasts in very short order, get all 3 of these buffs at once. And the cool thing is, the more haste we have, the more quickly we're moving towards getting the next beast. So this just looks very fun. A lot of haste, a lot of the time. Very, very powerful beasts, increasing all of your stats, mastery, crit. It's just great. Very, very powerful for a 2-piece in particular. Big fan. Next up is the Pack Leader 4-piece. So summoning a beast has a 25% chance to rouse the nearby wildlife into a stampede that charges your target and deals very, very heavy physical damage to your enemies over 7 seconds. Now, right now, it's doing way too much damage on the PTR. There's no way this will stay. But it'll do a lot of damage, I'm sure. And your chance to summon a stampede is increased to 100% while you have lead from the front, which is for the first 12 seconds of Coordinated Assault. So during your cooldowns, when you're summoning beasts, you'll always summon these stampedes. This looks extremely powerful, but it currently incentivizes some... I don't hate it that much. There's a few problems with it. So you have this independently ticking Howl of the Pack Leader cooldown that determines when will your next beast come up, right? Well, with this, it becomes very important to summon as many beasts as possible during the first 12 seconds of Coordinated Assault. So you want to hold your Coordinated Assault, your usually 1 minute cooldown, for when we have a natural Howl of the Pack Leader coming up. The lead from the front talent ensures that Coordinated Assault will always summon a beast, but we want that to coincide with also summoning the other beast within the first 12 seconds of a Coordinated Assault, because that means we get 2 100% chance very powerful stampedes during our cooldowns with all of our other multipliers. This means occasionally holding our 1 minute cooldown to make this happen, and holding a 1 minute cooldown feels really bad, and sometimes you'll just get unlucky and have to hold it quite a bit. So that part I don't really like, although it is potentially very powerful, and it's going to be one of those things where the skill ceiling goes up, because people who will get this right more often will do significantly more damage than those who don't. So yeah, good and bad on that one. But overall, the Pack Leader set bonuses look very, very strong and quite thematic as well. So I'm a huge fan of Pack Leader Survival going into Season 3. Next up are the Sentinel set bonuses for Survival. So when Lunar Storm fades, so every 30 seconds or so, you gain the Boon of Elune, causing your next 2 Wildfire Bombs to deal arcane damage and have the damage increased by 60%. And that's their initial damage. So the arcane damage thing doesn't really do anything for our bombs because they already deal fire damage and therefore bypass armor. So it's only, quote-unquote, 60% to the initial damage, which translates to around 38% overall, which is huge. For marksmanship, it's 20% on their aim shots. So you'll definitely want to tip these bombs because, 60% initial plus the tip of the spear bonus that you get, which is also amplified. These are, this will set up some massively powerful wildfire bombs for Sentinel. And it's pretty strong as well. It does incentivize you to maybe pay attention to it, play it a little bit differently. I basically like this, especially for a 2-piece. Now we get to the bad part though. So Sentinel's damage is increased by 25%. Sentinel is completely passive. Its damage is now 25% higher. Cool. Abilities that consume the Boon of Elune, so that means your first 2 Wildfire Bombs after Lunar Storm fades, are guaranteed to apply 2 stacks of Sentinel. The problem is, more stacks of Sentinel is essentially worthless because we already basically charge capped or stack capped on Sentinel all the time. It's fully saturated and there's no benefit to summoning more or stacking more Sentinels beyond the cap. So essentially the second part of this, the interesting part on paper, is worthless. And really this 4-piece just boils down to 25% damage increase to a modest passive, which has to be one of the lamest tier sets in recent memory. Now, Diamond, who wrote a lot of good notes on all this stuff on the Survival Discord, she offered a really good suggestion for another 4-piece entirely that I thought I would bring everyone's attention to. So first of all, arcane damage is increased by 10%. During Coordinated Assault, your cooldowns, your main abilities like Butchery for AoE and Mongoose Bite on single target deal additional arcane damage. And during your cooldowns, these arcane attacks have an extremely high chance to call down a lunar star at your target that deals AoE damage. And whenever something gets caught in the blast, this immediately implodes all Sentinel stacks and, therefore improves the value of additional ones, because that's the problem. We're generating way more Sentinel stacks than we're imploding, and we're just overcapping on them. This is like thematically strong. It's very easy to tune independently on AoE and single target. You could also apply it to Wildfire Bomb, why not? And it's just more instances of damage as arcane damage, which is very thematic. It would be like a great opportunity to add a lot of visual stuff to Sentinel, which is pretty visually light in my opinion right now. Yeah, it's a pretty good for a quick cook here. The tuning will be important, of course, but the point is to build around an arcane damage-based niche in a way that's straightforward to tune, because I think the vibe I'm getting is that Blizzard doesn't want to make set bonuses that are too difficult or time-consuming to tune properly. So yeah, that's it. Overall, very, very happy with most of the changes. Substantial buffs to its overall damage, but especially AoE due to all the buffs that's Wildfire Bomb damage. AoE was currently its main weakness, so a change here is very welcome. And Mythic Plus Survival Hunters have the most reason to be excited, but all Survival Hunters have stuff to be excited about here, just because the numbers are very positive, and we're leaning more into the most exciting button in Survival's arsenal, which is Wildfire Bomb. And Survival is already pretty strong at single target, so getting buffs there as well could mean Survival is really, really strong single target next season. So Survival is getting a targeted buff at its biggest weakness, and simultaneously an overall buff to its damage. Just very, very good. Some changes are weird, like Bloodseeker and the Sentinel tier set bonus, at least the second one, are pretty lame. So those are my main points of feedback. I have no idea why Bloodseeker is, I don't understand the change. I would love for someone at Blizzard to explain it or do something different or just revert it. It wasn't, even its original conception wasn't that loved either. I never really liked it that much to begin with. But now it's just nothing without other players. It just doesn't make sense to me. But if you like this sort of content, please check out my Patreon, where you can get access to my Season 3 Hunter UI and week hours when they come out, the Hunt Masters chat in my Discord, and where you can always ask me questions, and video/log/armory reviews at higher tiers, and at the highest tier, Discord one-on-one coaching from me personally, and much more. Join my Discord to communicate with me directly, linked in the description, and like, comment, subscribe. Peace.